This is fortuitous because it is an insight I've just gained about a controversial subject that I've thought about for a number of years. And it's a very difficult subject. Synchronicity is the subject. Synchronicity in the sense of the way C.G. Jung, that's C.G. Jung, Carl Jung. And Wolfgang Pauli had a correspondence, and Wolfgang Pauli was a physicist. And so there's some overlap somehow between Jungian psychoanalysis and theoretical physics. Synchronicity is the notion that, of extraordinarily uncanny coincidence. For example, I released an album. I recorded an album of computer music that was released on Planet Mu in 2005. And there is a recording on that album. Part of the title of the recording is Rosemary. That was named for the fact that during a 1 month stretch, roughly, it was 4 or 5 weeks, the word rosemary, or the concept, images maybe, rosemary just all of a sudden started appearing everywhere. For example, there was something about Rosemary's Baby. So Rosemary's Baby started appearing everywhere. But then I went to a college graduation of a friend of mine, and one of their relatives who was there, they were named Rosemary. That sort of thing. So in the case of a word, so there's some intuitions related to such synchronicities about exactly how uncanny they are. And usually what I notice is that we tend to try and use a fair amount of body English. If you want to bowl a strike, it helps if if the ball's going toward the gutter, you just body English. Synchronicities. For example, it's not a synchronicity to say, oh my God, was that a word that came out of your mouth? A word just came out of my mouth too. What a coincidence. Well, some things are more coincidental, more uncannily coincidental than others. Okay. So, I've never really, you try to read stuff on the subject of synchronicity, and it starts off, the subject itself doesn't have a very good reputation. It looks like bunk metaphysics. It looks like, for example, in the title of the book, Synchronicity, the title is, I think, Synchronicity, and I don't know the German, sorry. We would do better to have the original German in front of us. But it is a non-causal principle of correlation. I think he says something like that. he thinks of synchronicity as a principle of non-causal correlation. And I don't know if he says non-causal or acausal. I mean, that would be, you've got to, if you want to learn about synchronicity and Carl Jung, the best thing to do is probably to read the book and then teach a course on it. At this point, anybody can teach their own course. Just read a book and then say, okay, I read this book and here I'm going to teach this course on it. I bet you could even charge money. I myself, just as a matter of personal preference, I myself wouldn't, I have grave hesitation, if that's an expression, about charging for intellectual work. But that is entirely a different subject. Because right now I am here to talk about what I conceive of as something I'm roughly calling Jen Psaki synchronicity. Jen Psaki synchronicity. So I'm going to do better for you in a second. I'm just situating the situation in the ists. Need to be a good situationist right now. Not really. Okay. So, for those of you who know me and or my mother is an artist. And over the past few years, her main focus has been a type of work that she does with used coffee filters. Used coffee filters, and she does all kinds of stuff with them, and just whoever knew that coffee stains could be so brilliant, but Dale knows how it's done. I told her this morning, I said, you're probably the world leader in coffee stain, what did I say? Rorschach ink blot coffee prints or something, I said. She may very well be. I mean, who does that, right? How many people would do, somebody might do that once. But she has literally thousands of prints like this. Okay. Now, she takes notes. This is slightly related. She takes lots of notes, my mother. If she's listening to the radio or watching TV and something is described, that she wants to remember, she will do what many people might do. She'll write it down. Now, consider Jen Psaki. Today is March 25th, I think, 2026, and Jen Psaki is very kind of aggressive podcast presence. And these days, like yesterday, for example, on whatever channels that I peruse, I saw several clips of Jen Psaki. Coincidentally. Now, I was just talking to my mother about an hour ago. And I mentioned Jen Psaki was a guest, and this is, I don't know how recent this was, but it's merely something that I was listening to. Jen Psaki had been a guest on Pumps and Welch. Pumps and Welch. I've had it podcast. Now, I've only been listening to Pumps and Welch literally for about 1 week. I'm like, seriously. Even though I was told, a dear friend of mine told me about them some months ago. And I kind of got into it, and then now I'm like super into them. And so I was probably telling my mom about those things. You know, Angie Pumps Sullivan, Jennifer Welch, and Jen Psaki. So Dale, my mother, she interrupts me and she says, "Oh my God, Jen Psaki." Dimitri, there's something in front of me, whether it was a coffee ground, a note. She had written down Jen Psaki. And it was there, right? So as I said, Jen Psaki, there was the word right in front of my mother. It said Jen Psaki. So my mother tends to point out, her threshold for what counts as coincidence is a bit lower than mine. Tends to be. I don't know how much more. Or I'm just an asshole, perhaps. I mean, let's consider that I'm just an asshole. Because what I mean by that is, you know, if I'm just an asshole, it means that my synchronicities must be like way crazier than anybody else's, right? So let me tell you about how the crazy synchronicity thing that happened to me. And then if you tell me yours and you say, "Oh my God, I can't believe it." So, you know, let me tell you about this crazy thing that happened to me, Dimitri. And then you tell me and I'm like, you call that a coincidence? That would mean that I'm an asshole. Just so we're clear. So she explained. Now when she's telling me this, my mother, I'm thinking I'm being judgmental, right? I'm thinking, okay, here comes like how much of a coincidence is gonna. I mean, already because my capacity for judgment is biased based on this idea that I think that she has a slightly lower threshold for what counts as coincidence. My mother, the person that I've probably learned the concept of coincidence from. Remember, I am an asshole, we suppose. Now, maybe by here you can kind of see where it's going. I don't know. I mean, ultimately, you know, what I'm talking about right now is the only real substantial commentary about this is going to have to come from physicists, quantum electrodynamics or something. Like, I don't know. I'm not from that world. But that's what we're talking about. So, in other words, we're definitely not talking about, you know, spooky metaphysics. Nah. No. I mean, whatever is true, whatever is real, has a scientific description that can be stated simply, plainly, directly, clearly, so that a 5-year-old can understand it. Oh my God, Jen Psaki. It's right in front of me. Now, of course, because I was an asshole, how did I react? I reacted with a sort of skeptical, or at least phenomenological suspension of doubt. I said, you know, the first thing that I said was something to the effect like, it was very reductive. I said, well, you take a lot of notes, of course, and Jen Psaki's been on podcasts and TV, you know, she's really been visible, right? So if I had been, like, let's say, just very simple description, you know, I had just been staring at the television or whatever we stare at these days, drooling for hours, and I'm just watching Jen Psaki, maybe because I'm into her or something. And then my mom's watching, like, because maybe we're both dumb shits and we only watch like one news program. We're both sitting there watching Jen Psaki, and like maybe, again, hypothetically, you know, let's suppose, you know, Idiocracy style, somebody is watching Jen Psaki every day and is like, oh my God, who is that? Jen Psaki. And they probably misspell the word, right? And then it's sitting in front of them. And then you talk to your other, of course, this is just, you know, I'm exaggerating for the sake of the hypothetical, but then you call your other illiterate friend and you mumble like, Jen Psaki, I was just watching Jen Psaki, and the other person says, oh my God, isn't that a coincidence? Okay, so statistically, as a coincidence, there is a certain likelihood that those people at that time would, you know, run across the words Jen Psaki. So that was the point that I was getting across to my mother. And I tried to, you know, because of the fact that I'm an asshole and I'm condescending and whatever, I probably tried to euphemize a fair bit. But no, she very aptly hit the brakes herself. She said, no, Dimitri, look, you know that I know that you know that I know. She didn't say that, but that I take notes. So it's not an impressive coincidence that that I would just write down the words Jen Psaki and then act like that was such a discovery. No, she says. She says, Dimitri, this is artwork that had randomly been sitting here. Artwork from like several years ago. So that's a slip. Even though the word or term or words gen Psaki seem to be the object in question, were actually, these are in terms of epistemic status, if you know, like an epistemology that has an epistemic interpretation, they are entirely two different objects of knowledge, or objects of experience, even though apparently gen Psaki, those words are in question in both. So what seems to be a discovery to me is the idea of a variety of types of synchronicity. There's not just one. There's not just because something looks like synchronicity that it's the same as any other experience that kind of looks like synchronicity too. The other point, and I guess I'll do it in the next video. Oh my God, JD Vance! JD Vance, come on! I mean, what better? Come on. What better of an individual to be situated now, given his intellectual and ethical, let's say, axiological predilections, right? Axiological, if JD Vance has such a thing. Axiological predilections of JD Vance. Oh, flip the script.